kept replaying everything, every change I didn't understand, trying to find the moment where love started slipping away. Because there was a time before this, a time you held me differently, a time I never imagined we could become strangers emotionally. Did losing me hurt you too? Or was I the only one breaking? Because I carried our ending like it changed something permanent inside me. I kept wondering if you ever stayed awake thinking about us, or if moving forward felt natural the second distance found your heart. Part of me wanted answers, wanted something that explained the silence, but another part already feared what the truth might sound like. Maybe that's why I kept asking questions with no real ending, because accepting your peace would hurt more than uncertainty. The painful part wasn't losing you, it wasn't learning how to live without us. It was wondering if my absence ever left an ache inside you too. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only grieving the relationship, I was grieving how differently we survived it. I kept telling myself I hated you, like repeating it enough could silence the part of me that still reached for you quietly. So I focused on the damage, on every moment that hurt me, because anger felt safer than admitting how much I missed you. Anger hurt less than missing you, at least that's what I convinced myself. Because bitterness gave me armor when heartbreak made me feel weak. I acted colder than I felt, pretended distance made me stronger, while secretly carrying the love I still couldn't let go of. And maybe that's why I stay angry, because sadness felt too dangerous. Like if I let myself miss you honestly, I'd fall apart all over again. So I held on to resentment, not because I wanted revenge, but because pain becomes easier when you give it another name. The painful part wasn't the anger, it wasn't becoming emotionally distant. It was realizing I used bitterness to hide how deeply I still missed you. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't holding on to hatred, I was holding myself together. I was still losing sleep, still replaying everything quietly, trying to understand how love could leave such different scars. While I stayed trapped in memories, you seemed untouched somehow, like life kept moving naturally without the weight I carried. You carried us more lightly, and I think that's what hurt me, because I was still drowning in something you already survived. I watched you smile normally, watch peace return to your life, while every night still felt like I was living inside our ending. I wanted to feel happy for you, wanted to stop comparing pain, but jealousy found me anyway, in places I didn't want it. Not because I hated your healing, not because I wanted you broken, but because I wish my heart knew how to let go. Your peace, it wasn't watching you move forward, it was realizing heartbreak stayed inside me longer than it stayed inside you. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't jealous of your happiness, I was jealous you escaped pain I couldn't. gentle with me today. in a way that should have felt simple. But instead of staying in the moment, my heart went somewhere else. I remembered how safe love felt, back when loving you felt effortless, back when comfort came naturally without fear attached to it. Everything kind reminded me of you, and I hated how quickly it happened, because even small moments now still carry your shadow somehow. I started comparing comfort to the way you once loved me, like my heart kept searching for something it already lost. And maybe that's what scares me, how deeply you stayed inside me, how ordinary things still find a way to bring your memory back. I thought time would have changed it, thought distance would have softened things, but some feelings stay alive long after people leave. The painful part wasn't thinking about you, it wasn't remembering old warmth again. It was realizing every new feeling of comfort still gets compared to us. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only missing your love, I was measuring everything against it. You gave me something simple, something that used to feel ordinary, and somehow my whole heart reacted like hope came back again. I caught myself smiling too quickly, reading deeper into small moments, like one little change could fix everything between us. I made small things feel like love, and that realization hurt me, because basic attention from you started feeling rare somehow. I celebrated tiny moments like they carried something bigger, while forgetting there was a time I never had to beg emotionally. And maybe that's what changed me, how slowly deprivation works, until your heart becomes grateful for things it once expected naturally. I didn't notice it happening, not while I was busy missing you, but somewhere along the way my standards quietly disappeared. The painful part wasn't appreciating effort, it wasn't wanting closeness again, it was realizing I became emotionally starved without fully admitting it. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't asking for too much, I just forgot how love used to feel. At first I told myself I only missed you because of love, because losing us felt heavier than anything I had known before. But silence has a way of revealing uncomfortable truths, and slowly I started noticing what my heart was really grieving. I miss feeling chosen, miss feeling emotionally wanted, miss the way your attention made ordinary days feel alive. And that realization hurt me, because it wasn't only about us. Part of me had grown dependent on the comfort of your love. I miss the constant connection, the feeling of always mattering, the way my name existed naturally inside your everyday life. And maybe that's what broke me, not just your absence itself, but how empty life suddenly felt without that reassurance around me. The painful part wasn't only losing you, it wasn't just mourning the relationship, it was realizing I became attached to the feeling of being loved by you. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only missing our connection, I was missing who I felt like inside it. I kept making excuses for us, kept believing difficult seasons were only temporary things love could eventually survive. So every small sign of warmth pulled my heart back in again, even when distance returned right after hope touched me. I waited for someone gone, for the version of you I still remembered, because part of me refused to believe love could change this much. I stayed attached to little moments, tiny pieces of who you used to be, while reality kept showing me something different every day. And maybe that's why I stayed, while letting go felt impossible, because I wasn't only loving you, I was loving who you once were with me. I kept searching your eyes for something familiar again, like maybe one good moment could bring everything back to life. The painful part wasn't loving you, it wasn't hoping things could heal, it was realizing I waited for someone you no longer knew how to be. Somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't holding on to the present, I was holding on to a memory. us together quietly, fixing every crack between us before it had time to grow. I apologized when I was hurting, chased conversations that felt distant, and somewhere inside all that effort, I forgot how tired I had become. I wanted you to fight for me just once without being asked. I wanted to feel chosen the way I kept choosing you. So I stayed silent for a while, hoping you'd pull me closer. But the quiet only showed me what I was afraid to know. Waiting for your effort, for some sign you felt the distance too. But days passed around us, and nothing really changed. And maybe that's what broke me, not the silence itself, but realizing I was the only one terrified of losing us. The painful part wasn't staying quiet, it wasn't wanting you to notice me, it was realizing love had become something I carried mostly alone. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't asking for too much, I just wanted you to fight for me too. I kept replaying everything, trying to understand our ending. How something that once felt certain could slowly become unfamiliar. I remembered every promise, every night we stayed awake talking. Every time I gave you pieces of myself without fear. Did you love me like I loved you? Or was I feeling everything deeper? Because I carried us like losing you changed something permanent in me. I believed every soft moment, every word that sounded forever. But now I'm left wondering if our hearts ever loved the same way. That's what haunts me, not only losing what we had, but questioning if I imagined how real it all felt to me. because I loved you completely without protecting myself first. And now I don't know if you ever stood in love that deeply too. The painful part wasn't the goodbye, it wasn't learning how to live without you. It was wondering if your love ever reached the depth mine did. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only grieving our ending, I was grieving the possibility I loved harder alone. There was a time I never questioned what I meant to you, because your love felt certain in ways that made me feel safe. I never had to fight for attention, never had to wonder where I stood, because being important to you used to feel natural. Then I started feeling easy to lose, and I hated what that did to me, because love once made me feel chosen. Now it made me feel replaceable. I noticed how quickly distance became normal between us, like my absence no longer changed the rhythm of your life. Plans became easier to cancel, silence became easier to carry, and I kept pretending not to notice how different everything felt. But little changes speak loudly when your heart is already afraid. And slowly I started realizing I no longer felt irreplaceable to you. The painful part wasn't the distance, it wasn't feeling less important, it was realizing I had started believing anyone could take my place beside you. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only afraid of losing you, I was afraid I had already become replaceable. Noticed the way things changed, not through words but through feelings. The way your energy shifted whenever I needed something emotional. You still answered me, still stayed when conversations happened. But warmth started feeling different, like like affection needed effort now. I started feeling heavy to love, and I hated admitting that, because there was a time before this when caring about me felt natural to you. Now every reassurance felt delayed, every moment felt harder to ask for, and slowly I started feeling guilty for needing love at all. I kept shrinking my emotions, trying not to ask for too much, trying to become easier for you to hold on to. But love shouldn't make you feel ashamed for needing comfort, and maybe that's what hurt me most, how carefully I started hiding my heart. The painful part wasn't needing affection, it wasn't wanting closeness from you, it was realizing I felt guilty for asking the person I love to love me back. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't becoming harder to love, you were becoming tired of trying. I started noticing the difference, the way love changed around my emotions, how everything felt lighter when I stayed easy to hold. During the happy moments, you loved me so naturally, like warmth came effortlessly when nothing complicated existed. You loved me best when I needed nothing, and I think that's what broke me, because the moment my heart got heavier, your distance started showing. I kept blaming myself, calling my feelings too much, instead of asking why love stopped feeling safe when I struggled. So I learned to hide things, to soften my emotions around you, trying to become easier for your love to stay close to. But needing reassurance isn't weakness, and hurting doesn't make someone difficult. Love is supposed to stay, even when things aren't simple. The painful part wasn't having flaws, it wasn't becoming emotionally messy, it was realizing your love felt strongest only when loving me stayed easy. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't asking for perfect love, I was asking for love that stayed through difficult moments. safe, like your love existed naturally. Like I never had to question whether I still belonged beside you. I didn't overthink small things, didn't measure every conversation, because being loved by you once felt effortless. Then I started chasing what was once mine, and I hated what that did to me, because love turned into something I suddenly felt I had to deserve again. I changed little parts of myself, trying to feel close to you, trying to become someone you would choose naturally again. Started overthinking everything, the way I spoke, the way I reacted, searching for the right version of me that could bring us back somehow. And maybe that's what hurt most, not the distance between us, but realizing I stopped feeling secure inside your love. The painful part wasn't fighting for us, it wasn't wanting things to heal, it was realizing I felt like I needed to earn your love again. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't trying to become better, I was trying to feel wanted again. Started noticing changes in the way your voice carried joy, the kind of happiness I hadn't heard around us in a long time. You sounded lighter somehow, like life moved easier through you. And every time I heard it, something heavy grew inside me. You sounded happier away from me, and I think that's what scared me, because I kept wondering if your best version no longer existed with us. I wanted to feel happy for you, wanted your joy to feel harmless, but my heart kept hearing distance inside every excited word. I noticed how alive you sounded when your world didn't include me, and I hated the thoughts that started following after that, because part of me feared what I didn't want to admit, that maybe your love with me had become something exhausting for you. The painful part wasn't hearing you happy, it wasn't watching you enjoy life, it was realizing I started fearing that your happiness grew stronger without me. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only afraid of losing you, I was afraid happy. I kept trying to save us, even in small, invisible ways, fixing silence before it deepened, holding conversations together alone. Every time distance appeared, I reached for you first again, because I believed love survived. When two people refused to quit, but I was the only one still holding on, and I think that's what broke me, because promises sound different when only one heart still protects them. I carried hope through exhaustion, through nights that emptied me emotionally, while slowly realizing I was fighting for us alone. I started noticing the imbalance, how naturally effort came from me, while your love became quieter every time things got difficult. And maybe that's the saddest part, how long I ignored the truth, because admitting it meant accepting that love had changed unevenly between us. The painful part wasn't fighting for us, it wasn't refusing to let go, it was realizing our relationship stopped mattering equally to both of us. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't losing because I gave up, I was losing because I fought alone. There was a time you reached for me without even thinking twice. I lived inside your days naturally, inside every little part of your life. You shared your thoughts so easily, your stress, your excitement, your fears, and loving you felt like being needed in ways that made my heart feel safe. Then I watched my place fade away, little by little, without warning, because you stopped reaching for me the way you used to. naturally. I noticed how easily you carried life without me, while I kept standing there, trying to understand what changed. You handle things alone more often. Stop letting me inside your emotions, and every quiet difference started feeling heavier to me. Maybe that's what hurt most, not becoming less important, but realizing I no longer felt necessary in your world. The painful part wasn't the distance, it wasn't feeling less included. It was watching myself disappear from a life I once felt deeply needed in. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only losing closeness, I was losing my place beside you. There was a time your voice felt like somewhere I could rest. No matter how heavy life became, you always made things softer somehow. I used to leave our conversations feeling understood again, like love still knew how to hold my heart gently. Then you became the thing that exhausted me, and I hated admitting that, because the person who once gave me peace started becoming my emotional weight. Instead, I overthought every reply, every pause, every small change, wondering if I was difficult for needing closeness from you again. Conversation stopped feeling safe, stopped feeling natural between us, and somehow I always left feeling heavier than before. Maybe that's what broke me, not the arguments themselves, but realizing I no longer felt comfort inside the person I loved most. The painful part wasn't talking to you, it wasn't trying to fix what changed. It was realizing love became something emotionally draining instead of healing. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only losing peace, I was losing the place I used to find it. Not suddenly, not all at once. Just little shifts in the way you started seeing the world. Your dreams became bigger, your excitement started sounding different. And at first I loved watching you become more of yourself. Then you started growing away from me, and I think that's what scared me, because every new version of your future started feeling further from us. I kept wondering quietly if I still belong beside you, or if the person you once loved no longer fit who you were becoming. I wanted to feel proud for you, wanted growth to feel beautiful, but fear kept finding me in places I couldn't ignore. 'Cause part of me noticed how differently you carried life now, and I started feeling left behind without you ever saying it out loud. The painful part wasn't watching you grow, it wasn't seeing your world expand, it was realizing I started fearing I was no longer enough for your future. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't afraid of your growth, I was afraid it no longer included me. Questioned whether I deserve to be loved. I never looked at myself through fear and uncertainty, but slowly things between us changed, and I started carrying blame for every silence, every distance, every moment that felt different. You made me question my worth, and I hate how deeply that stayed, because loving you slowly turned into doubt in myself instead. I kept calling myself too emotional, too insecure, too difficult, while trying to become someone who felt easier for you to love. I overthought every conversation, every shift inside your energy, searching for mistakes inside me whenever your warmth disappeared. And maybe that's what broke me, not feeling imperfect, but realizing love made me see myself in ways I never had before. The painful part wasn't having flaws, it wasn't feeling emotionally messy, it was realizing I started believing I was hard to love around you. It's somewhere inside that truth I finally understood myself. version of myself that once felt worthy of love.
Started noticing changes in the spaces between us. The way silence lasted longer every time I reached for you. My words stopped feeling urgent, my feelings felt easier to postpone. And somehow I kept pretending none of it was hurting me. I became easy to ignore, and I think that's what broke me. Because there was a time before this when my heart mattered naturally to you. I kept waiting for your attention while calling it overthinking instead. Because accepting the truth felt heavier than the silence itself. Even little moments change, the ones that once felt effortless. And I noticed how quickly my emotional needs became inconvenient. Maybe that's what hurt most, not the waiting itself, but realizing distance became normal for the person who once held me close. The painful part wasn't unanswered messages, it wasn't feeling less important. It was realizing you could ignore my pain without even noticing what it did to me. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only losing your attention, I was losing my place in your heart quietly. There was a time I felt secure, like your love would stay naturally. I never questioned your presence, never feared losing us suddenly. But slowly little things changed, and my peace changed with them. Small moments started carrying more fear than they ever should have. Your love stopped feeling safe, and I hated what that did to me. Because every quiet distance started sounding like goodbye inside my head. A colder tone could ruin me, one short reply could change my whole night. And I kept pretending I wasn't becoming anxious around love. I started searching for warning signs in places that once felt harmless. Because uncertainty teaches your heart to expect pain everywhere. Maybe that's what hurt most. Not the distance itself, but realizing I no longer felt calm inside the person I trusted most. The painful part wasn't the uncertainty, it wasn't fearing what might happen. It was realizing your love stopped feeling emotionally safe to stay inside. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only afraid you'd leave, I was afraid you already were emotionally gone. There was a time with you that felt effortless and safe. I never measured my words, never feared being fully myself. I could laugh without thinking, speak without protecting my heart. Because loving you once felt like somewhere I could finally rest. Then I started walking carefully around you, and I hated what we became, because I stopped feeling natural inside the person I love most. I analyzed every sentence, hid emotions before they reached you, trying not to disturb the distance already growing between us. I became careful with my feelings, careful with what I reveal. Like honesty itself, started feeling emotionally dangerous. And maybe that's what hurt most, not the nervousness alone, but realizing your presence no longer felt emotionally safe to me. The painful part wasn't overthinking, it wasn't becoming quieter around you, it was realizing I started tiptoeing around the person who once felt like home. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only afraid of losing you, I was afraid of being myself around you too. Lately I barely recognize the person I've become around love. Someone who reads too deeply into things that once felt harmless. I started questioning silences, searching for reassurance everywhere, while my heart slowly forgot what calm used to feel like. I missed who I was with you, back when love felt emotionally safe. before overthinking became part of my everyday thoughts. I used to feel secure naturally, used to trust without fear. But somewhere inside losing us, I started losing myself too. I kept blaming my emotions, calling myself anxious and difficult. But deep inside I knew something between us had changed first. Because fear doesn't appear without a reason to stay, and distance has a way of reshaping even gentle hearts. The painful part wasn't only losing us, it wasn't just watching love fade, it was realizing I lost the calm version of myself beside you too. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only grieving our relationship, I was grieving who I became, trying to save it. I used to tell you everything, every fear, every heavy feeling, because loving you once felt like somewhere honesty could breathe. But slowly things started changing, and opening up stopped feeling safe. Every vulnerable moment seemed to leave distance behind it. I started hiding my heart from you, and I hated what that meant, because I began protecting my feelings from the person I love most. Sometimes you pulled away, sometimes I felt like too much, and somehow every honest conversation ended with me apologizing instead. So I started carrying things quietly, keeping sadness to myself, trying to avoid another moment that made us feel emotionally strained. And maybe that's what hurt most, not the silence itself, but realizing honesty stopped feeling welcome between us. The painful part wasn't hiding my emotions, it wasn't becoming emotionally careful, it was realizing I no longer felt safe being fully honest with you. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only afraid of losing you, I was afraid of being too real around you too. place where being alone felt easier, where silence by myself brought me more peace than us. But lately every conversation carried tension I couldn't explain, like love stopped feeling comforting and started feeling emotionally exhausting. Loneliness started feeling safer, and that realization destroyed me, because I used to run to you whenever life became too heavy. Now I find comfort in moments without overthinking, without fearing your distance or wondering if I'm too much again. I started enjoying quiet nights, not because I stopped loving you, but because my heart finally rested when it wasn't afraid anymore. And maybe that's the saddest part, how emotionally draining love became, until loneliness itself started feeling softer than us. The painful part wasn't wanting space, it wasn't needing time alone, it was realizing peace found me easier when your love wasn't around me. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only emotionally tired, I was emotionally safer without us lately. There was a time our arguments still carried love underneath them. Even when we were frustrated, I could still feel us trying. We fought because we cared, because losing each other hurt. And somehow even the difficult moments still felt emotionally alive. Then I stopped feeling us during the fights, and I think that's what scared me, because distance replaced passion in places love used to exist. I stopped crying like before, stopped begging to be understood, while my heart slowly turned quiet inside conversations that once mattered deeply. Every disagreement felt colder, more empty than emotional, like we were only repeating words without truly reaching each other anymore. And maybe that's what broke me, not the arguments themselves, but realizing I no longer felt the same urgency to save us. painful part wasn't fighting, it wasn't feeling misunderstood. It was realizing I became emotionally numb inside a love I once cared about completely. And somewhere inside that truth, I finally understood my sadness. I wasn't only losing connection, I was losing emotional feeling for the pain too.